What's going on, guys? It's Mohammed, the host of Aware Alpha, and welcome to episode 68, 69. It's going to be one of those. And just want to say, I'm feeling grateful, feeling thankful as usual. And this morning, as I was self-reflecting during my meditation, it's just crazy to look back on what can happen in your life if you decide to take action on things. And the idea of this podcast, I think back to August 2020, and this was just a vision. It was just an idea I had in my mind, and look at where we are at now. So I think it's so important that when you're listening and you're putting an hour into listening to these podcasts, besides just entertainment purposes, I really have the intentions for you guys to also take something away from it and start to implement it in your day-to-day life and take action on an idea. And as most of you guys know, the last couple of weeks, I had been, bringing a lot of guests onto the podcast. And these are individuals that I've been following for 12 to 18 months. And it's almost like kind of like creeping, right? Watching them and making sure, am I aligned with them, and looking up to them and implementing their ideas and as I was starting to bring these guests on, I started to really think about it from that aspect. Who is it that I look up to online? Who are the individuals that, their messages and their posts resonates with me the most? And today's guest, I'm super excited, guys, to have this individual on the show. He's got a wealth of, I sounded that funny, wealth. So we have a wealth of knowledge on a lot of these topics that I'm going to discuss with him. And you guys are also going to enjoy his accent. So I just want to say a couple of things about him before I bring him on. He's, like I said, he's got a wealth of knowledge. So he goes by the name of Jim Vance. He's a certified identity and success coach, certified NLP practitioner, certified timeline therapist, and a certified hypnotherapist who guides purpose-driven men to become empowered masculine leaders in their life, business, and relationships. With a master's degree in educational leadership, he taught and coached in public school system for 11 years. Experiencing many trials and tribulations along the way, he was called to heal, transform, and up-level in his own life and relationships. And now he has a deep purpose and mission to lead 1 million men to transform and up-level their own intimacy, income, and impact. Thank you so much for jumping on, Jim.
Hey, thank you so much, Mohammed. I really appreciate it.
No, man, I feel like it's a blessing seeing all these. I feel like you know so much on so many different topics. I'm just curious. One of the questions that comes off the top of my head here is, I feel like, in the last, 100 or 200 or 300 or 400 years, right? What I feel like I don't think the coaching, industry or men able to host group sessions and these one-on-one coaching. And like we live in a time where as men, we are actually consciously have to reach out to mentors and coaches in these groups and things, right? And I'm curious, what happened along the way that men, started to need this? Or was it like, did we have this out all our lives, back hundreds of years ago? Or like, were hundreds of years ago were individuals reaching out to coaches and mentors in their community and like, take me on, like, or is it that something happened to men along the way that now we consciously and have to be militant on reaching out for ideas and philosophies that can help us become successful men in life?
Yeah, honestly, I think over time, so one of my degrees is history, so I love history. So over time in our past, we were more tribalized. So in those moments, we had elders in the community that we would reach out to that would lead, guide, and direct the men as they grew. And I think over time, since we've become more expansive as a society, we've grown out of local communities and we've become more isolated as men. And so as we become more isolated, we're left to deal with our own shit with ourselves. And so we see women all around us all the time reaching out and looking for help. And the hardest thing for a man to do is ask for help. And so I try to normalize the idea of asking for help because it's easy to live in your solitude and fall apart in your solitude. Yeah.
That's so, wow. And you said it perfectly. And it's interesting. I was thinking about really, if you look at the last 100 years, right, where, now women are starting to work as well. And we have daycare and all these things. So you grow up, from the age of 9, 10, and social media, especially in the last 20 years, comes in. So it's like, you don't have that concept of mom and dad, and then they're raising their child, and the only other individual elder that this person will see is somebody at school, and then there lives in a small communities, comparing to since the Industrial Revolution over the last 100 years, where the farmers and their kids started moving out. I guess we don't have that, coaching, we can call it, or that, discipline, those lessons. And that's why we are where we are. That's interesting. And what do you think is like so important about this concept of the fact that like these, like, because I feel like myself I can't really help anyone. Individuals have to actually be already, motivated to do something, to make changes in their life. Right. So I think one of the things, actually, the thought that I'm just going into right now is that like, I'm grateful for these coaching in this industry and the self-development and like the masterminds that you can be a part of, and the Facebook groups, and even like yourself, doing what you do. It's like being able to find individuals like yourself, because that's how I have been able to grow. That's how I have been able to realize that like, it's okay to, express my emotions, and it's okay to, do this and this and this stuff. And it's to be a man. And, the things that, if my father growing up told me don't cry, and I thought I was like, and I never did, and blocked my emotions. And then I see individuals online where I'm like, no, this person says it's okay to do this and this. And like, and then I take on those lessons and, in my life. One of the things I was reading about you, like, what does timeline therapist does? Like, I'm curious. I've never even heard of that concept.
So, and I want to address what you just said. I think a big thing that allows, and then I'll ask you a question, but I think a big thing that for men is we have to be constantly seeking. And that's the masculine identity, is we're constantly seeking more for ourselves, better for ourselves, development, solutions, logical point A to point B direction. And a lot of times, if we're not in that space and we surround ourselves with people not moving in that space, we get lost in our own mind, because we're in our mind, we're still doing it, but we're not finding people that are moving in the same direction. So surrounding yourself with people, communities, mentors, things like that, where it's not that you're needing them to help you, you're needing them to teach you how to help yourself. Because I feel like that's what I do. I unlock in men the ability to be their own rescuer, and learn how to ask yourself serious questions, learn how to self-diagnose, learn how to become self-aware, and really start to maneuver your ship in the direction you want to go, instead of allowing people, circumstances to move you all the time. And I see a lot of men that move that way. They allow their relationships to move them. They'll allow their families to move them. They allow the world to just tell them what to do and how to do it and where to go. And they never have a direction of their own. And so their identity is not their own identity. It's what the world tells them they should be as a man. So that becomes, but timeline therapy is it's a cool concept. So what the premise is that all people create emotional attachment between the ages of 0 and 8.
Okay.
So almost every emotional attachment you've created in your life is between 0 and 8. And then after that, you start to develop stories around your emotional attachments. So you make those emotional attachments mean more than what they are. And so when you get, how old are you, Mama?
At 31.
So at 31, you're still operating emotionally as a 5-year-old. And so what I teach men to do, and I walk them through several techniques where you're able to go back, collapse the attachment to the emotion, and learn how to reassign emotion healthy. And that way you're able to really become emotionally intelligent and decide, like, do I need this emotion to express this problem? Because a lot of what we do as men is we express anger or fear and things like that, but they're based off of ideas that we were 3 and 4 years old and not having our needs met, or not thinking things were happening the way we should have. We think they should have happened. And so we've created these emotional attachments that allow us to become irrational, really, in our emotional capabilities to lead anybody. And, so, and I'm a firm believer, like, when your emotions are super high and out of control, your intelligence is super low and you're unable to think at a high level.
Is this like the same as inner child work, or like is it
it's not the same as inner child work, but I do inner child work too. Yeah.
Okay. Just because like
Yeah,
that's
so it's just like timeline. So we go through your timeline. I'll look through certain events where you created your attachment. So you'd be surprised at how fast, because your conscious mind, like you and I are talking right now, you're hearing everything that comes in. Your subconscious is taking in everything outside of that all the time. You have a computer that's recording information.
Yep.
You can go back to that information at any point with the right guidance. And you can pull it back up, look at it, learn from it, move on from it. I'm a big like learner, like see what it was, what can I learn, how do I apply for future.
So like I'm curious, that's actually, so if somebody, let's say, had a traumatic childhood experiences where, you know, they were so traumatic that they actually forgot. And a lot of times in trauma, you know, like I'm 31 and I started to remember things in the last 2-3 years since I've started meditating and going to 10-day silent meditation retreats and doing this like, you know, child work and all these things. Remember things that I had went through, like, you know, I totally forgot. It's not like I totally I just never acknowledged it. So I grew up in Afghanistan, and only in last year there, Jim, I started, as I was doing this work, and I'm like crying a lot, and like through my meditations that things are coming up. When my sister one day, she's like, dude, you act like you forgot like the most important things that happen in your life. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You know? And she's like, you were a child of war. Like we grew up where we've seen people's brains get blown up, and so it's like, you can't operate in life now and act like those moments didn't affect you. And that's how I started to, you know, right. So now as a timeline therapist, right, like how would you help someone remember those experiences that they may not remember?
I mean, there's certain techniques you can walk back through to get them. It's almost a meditative state, not a hypnotic state, but more of a meditative state where you can recall certain events. And sometimes it's so detailed you can't even believe you remembered it. And you know, with certain traumas, our brain is smart enough to like, hey, you don't need to experience that all the time. And so it protects you until you're ready to see it again. And so now, I mean, with your high level of work, you're obviously ready to see again. And that's okay. And accept like, hey, this is who I am. You know, that's a good thing.
That's probably one of the most important steps of, you know, when you're doing this healing stuff, is like accepting that something's happened the way it happened, and then forgiving yourself and actually processing it. That's
it's probably the most freeing thing I've done for my relationships, and just with myself and then with my wife, is being able to accept myself, the good stuff and the shitty stuff, and allowing her to see that. And then she's like, oh, I can trust you now. Because I can't trust a man that's always perfect. I want to see the shit.
No, it's so true.
I like men the same way. Like when I work with men, I want men with a little dirt. I call it dirt under your nails.
Yeah, of course. And we all have it, really, right?
Yeah, we all do.
You know,
men try to give you the perception of what they want you to think they are instead of who they really are.
Yeah. And I think it's like, and once again, I don't really, you know, like I have, you know, empathy and love for all these men, right? Because it's like, I was once one of them, in a sense of where I didn't even know what I didn't know, right? I wasn't even aware of information that I know these days. You know, my early 20s, I was very low surface level relationships. I wasn't in touch with myself at all, you know? So it's like, I can understand that how most people, like, sometimes I don't get why most men are not doing the work, or most men are not going after their, you know, goals and their dreams. But it's like, I also can, then I build that empathy. It's like, okay, Muhammad, you were once there where you didn't see it, right? You didn't know and you weren't aware. What do you think is like, how important it is, you know, in our relationships, right? Like, how important is a relationship, I guess I would say, in the pursuit of helping you become your most masculine or most aware man in this day and age? Like, how much does a relationship help? And I should say, be specific, a healthy relationship, someone that's, you know, you're able to work with and build with and, you know, do everything with in a way. How important is that in like helping you grow as a man?
I think the most important relationship is the relationship you have with yourself. That pursuit is the most important. Any relationship comes from that is going to be based on how you love yourself and how you respect yourself, how you trust yourself. those are gonna manifest into your other relationships. And I feel like a lot of men have traded their identity as a man to be in a relationship for the idea of love.
Yeah.
Instead of falling in love where they are with themselves. And I know that sounds kind of maybe corny and cliche, but it's like you gotta love the man you are.
Yeah.
So that you can show up in a place to be loved.
Yeah.
And it's hard for men to understand that. And we're so outwardly given. The masculine is the giver. The feminine is the receiver.
Yeah.
And so we're always giving. But we got to realize like the giving starts with us. Like, and we learn to love that, learn to build that relationship, be solid as hell there. Like, then we can pursue other relationships. And like you said, they need to be relationships, growth oriented.
Yeah.
Responsibility on each person, not on the relationship, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
No, you just, what you said about loving ourselves first, like I'm so big on that. And like, it's been my journey of learning, I didn't love myself as much as, I love myself so much now than comparing to back in the day. And I was recently in a men's circle and someone asked, it was like, oh, let's go around and talk about what's one thing that you're super proud of in the last 12 months. And my answer actually was, how much I have just started to love myself. And I'm proud of that, and because it's just led to more growth, better relationships, more self-awareness, attracting better partners,
Yes.
So yeah, when you were saying that, I don't think it's cliche at all. And that's the crazy thing is that the men that I always say in this podcast, like the men that listen to this and you get triggered or you feel resistance when you just heard me and Jim talk about loving ourselves and being there for ourselves and all those things. If you actually have some resistance building up when you hear this, I would highly suggest you to dig deeper within that trigger and be like, why am I finding resistance towards this individual talking about loving myself? Because he's not talking about like loving him. He's telling me that like one of the best things is to love myself. And why am I building resistance? So that's a lesson there that you could, journal, do some compassionate journaling and figure that out, write down why am I have resistance towards the idea of loving myself, right?
Yeah.
But Jim, I totally on that. Go ahead.
I feel like it's a day-to-day process. I have had people ask me tons of times, like, what changed in you? And I said, I just started choosing every second. I chose every second for myself. Like I chose to show up for myself every day. I chose to love myself every day. I chose to respect myself. I chose to trust myself in my moves and how I showed up to the world, because there was a large part of my life where I questioned everything I did.
Yeah.
I was looking for approval for everything I did. I didn't accept who I was as a man out in space. So then I had to start choosing those things. And the more I chose them, the more I could just embody and show up that way every day. And now I still do. Like, it's just part of who I am.
Yeah.
And it's a process that I wake up and that's what I do.
It's a lifestyle, I like to say. Lifestyle. What does on a practical way, like what does that look like? How can someone, start loving themselves? And what does that look like? Share some things that maybe you have done on your journey. Could it be journaling, working out? Like, I'm curious to know what that looks like.
I think all the above. I mean, obviously, I'm a firm believer, like I call it like your form, like who you are as a man, your health, your body is like your portal to your purpose. So if you're not really taking care of yourself, you're numbing out every day. You don't have to go lift 1,000,000 pounds. You don't have to run 9,000 miles, but are you putting an effort on who you are in a physical form every day to really say, hey, I want to take care of this vessel because this vessel holds my message to the world. And do I take care of myself on a spiritual level every day? And do I meditate? Do I journal? Do I read? Do I consume? Do I have mentors every day? Do I ask myself tough ass questions? Do I hold myself responsible for the way I show up to the world? And then, I feel also just learning like to accept yourself, like look at yourself in the mirror every day. This is one practice I did, is like, I would say every day. I did this for like, I think about 6 months straight. Every day I looked in the mirror every night before I went to bed and said 3 things I loved about myself.
That's amazing.
And, like straight in the boss. And then 3 things that I forgave myself for.
Mm.
And then 3 things that I wanted to bring into this world through myself. And I just did that every day. And every day I changed it. So I the 3 things I loved, I changed every day. I want to find new things I love about myself, so I can really start to see myself from my own eyes instead of what the world told me I was.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you journal?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Nice. What would you like? What type of journaling do you do? And in the sense of like, what do you journal about? Or like
so every day when I wake up, I wake up early and I go to the gym at like 6:30 in the morning. So I sit in the parking lot and first thing I do is I journal all my gratitudes for the day. Nice. That's something I do every day. It never leaves. And then I'll ask like kind of my intentions for my day as a man. And I write out like I want to be very specific intentionally with what I'm going to show up to do with my world. And as things pop up, so like, I mean, obviously wounds pop up for me still being in a relationship. My wife's a coach. She is a fucking powerhouse. And so she challenges me on a daily basis to be in the highest self. And so as things pop up, if it's like a worth thing, or if it's a good enough thing, whatever it may be, I would put in like, what do I need to learn from that situation? Just write it down. What does that mean about my worth as a man? What does that mean about this? I always try to relate it back to, what does that situation mean about me? And a lot of times it doesn't mean anything about me, or what can I learn from that situation that would move me forward? So any conflict I come in contact with, I'm huge on conflict. I like conflict. It's probably the most important growth tool we have.
Yeah.
Most people dodge it like it's the damn plague, but it's the most in a relationship. Conflict's the most important growth tool for the relationship. You find out how to grow together.
Yeah.
And so my wife and I, it's not that we fight all the time, but we use conflict as a platform for growth. We're always growing ourselves together because we're able to identify our own shit inside of the conflict, and then we can heal the relationship through that.
That's amazing.
I'm big on questions. So I know you're probably the same way. Whenever I get into situations that don't feel set right with my soul, they don't feel good, I start asking myself a series of questions. I just look at questions I can take responsibility for. I just want to take responsibility personally for everything that's going on in my world. And even if it's like I'm in a conflict with somebody, even if it's not my shit that's being brought to the table, I'm like, who was I being in that moment that triggered that situation?
Yeah.
And then so I can just start seeing myself more and more clear. So as I step through the day, I can adjust and move in different scenarios.
I was like thinking about, like I always say, there's lessons in all our triggers, anything that's triggered. So in a relationship, anything that's a trigger, it's just another lesson, another way to just dig deeper and be like, okay, why am I being triggered by, why are these emotions coming up in this moment? What is these emotions trying to teach me right now? Which comes down to the question, which, I'm so big on questions. And like, Tony Robbins, he said quality questions leads to a quality life. And I've started and been asking myself questions for like 4 or 5 years, actually. And I also learned this on a podcast from Tim Ferriss. He once shared, and he started to do this for himself. And he asked himself this question: how can I love myself better in this world? And I asked myself that for like 6 months. And it's interesting. It's crazy what can happen, right? Which I'm aware of what's happening. I'm just putting my mind to work, right, when I'm asking a question. But it's just fascinating what can happen, when you ask yourself that question of how can I love myself more? How can I, earn an extra 10K a month? And how your mind actually goes to work and makes things happen, right?
So when I used to teach, this is how I learned this concept is. So I taught a college level class in the high schools. So all my kids got college credit. But in that space, I would teach them how to take tests by asking themselves questions. Not by, you would read the question and then ask yourself questions. You can find an answer in 5 seconds. And so I would teach them how to ask questions to yourself to find an answer. And so I would apply that to myself, and I would teach them to apply that. Like, you can apply this everywhere you go. The more you seek the answer here, the easier the answer will show up for you. But if you start asking me, asking him, asking her, the answer is going to evade you because you're in pursuit of.
And you're not yourself when you're asking externally, right? It's not a good form of self-discovery.
No.
If you ask yourself, it's much more better, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on gratitude? Like, I know you said you practice it, but like, how important, like like for me, I owe gratitude everything. Like 6 years ago or so, I started practicing gratitude. Before I was meditating, before I was doing this inner work, or before anything, I just started saying 3 things I'm grateful for. Like, I'm so happy and grateful for this. And that has led to a journal, and has led to, like, when I have a published book on it and everything like that. It's like drastically changed my life.
Yeah.
But I'm curious your thoughts.
I feel as a man that I can't be trusted with my desires if I'm not thankful and grateful for what I have right now. And this is the battle that I've faced. And one of the big ones is learning to be, because I'm a very like high achieving person. So when I find a goal, I go get it, and I'm like forward focused, going to get it all the time. The problem is I'm not present where I'm at, and I'm not able to see myself in the journey and learn from what I'm going through. And so what I've had to really learn to do is slow myself down in the process, especially in the business I'm in. You get so focused in on building a business and building a company and growing and expanding, you forget to take time to be grateful for what is happening in your world right now. What do you have? Who's coming to you? How are you helping? How are you impacting? And like, what are you blessed by every day? And it's when you start to just slow down, you forget like the end of the road. It's like, man, I want to feel this feeling every day.
Yeah.
And I want to feel that level of just, it's like peace.
Yeah.
When I feel it like unease is when I'm not centered and grounded in gratitude in the moment.
No,
it's when I'm just stressed out over here, over there.
Gratitude has done wonders for me, man. Like, it's just crazy. Like, for me, and I was actually talking about this the other day on the podcast, especially being present. And one of the things as entrepreneurs and overachievers, something I've noticed and I'm learning myself is, they always say, right, the magic is in the journey. It's not the destination. You want to enjoy the process. And it's taken me probably a year or so where I've started to learn and enjoy the process so much more. Probably in the last 6 months or so, I have become way more present, even though there's moments, and I think that's where I've noticed from the very successful people out there, that the ones that are really happy and grateful for their journeys are the ones that have actually learned to enjoy the process and the journey itself, right? And I think that the number one practice that I believe that can help you become more present is gratitude, because gratitude, actually, by practicing gratitude, it helps you become present, because in those moments you're actively focused on things that you're grateful for in your life right now. And if I say I'm so happy and grateful for this podcast, for example, I'm present in that moment. So, and it's like a realization I'm having recently.
When I run programs for guys, the initial thing is to ground in the gratitude. So every day they have to post their gratitudes, and I try to get them very specific about the day. So, it's very easy to do, like, I'm thankful for life. I'm grateful that I'm breathing. I know those things. I'm grateful for those things.
Yeah.
I want to be specific about, like, what am I grateful for? Actually, like, I concentrated in and I thought, like, man, that moment right there, I felt that. Like, I feel grateful there. I feel beautiful there. And so when I feel like when I started getting very specific with my gratitudes about moments, events, people, opportunities, it's when it started to expand for me, because that state, that feeling that comes from that, you're like, I want to expand that feeling.
No, that's such a good point too, in the sense of, like, it can get very normal to just be like, I'm so happy and grateful for life and this and that.
Yeah.
But like to get specific on the day, that's something like I'm actually making a note in my head, like tomorrow morning or even after this podcast, to just, focus on a couple of things I'm grateful for right now about today and what I'm going to do and what's going to happen for me. Because that's when you're really getting present.
Yeah. It's finding the things that light you up in your day, because those are the feelings you want to expand. That's the emotion that you want to kind of push forward. We're all grateful for life. I wake up every day, man, thank God that I woke up. But how grateful were you for that interaction you had with somebody at the grocery store that brought you a new awareness, or that opened up this door over there? Did you even acknowledge that moment? Did you even acknowledge somebody offering to pay for your food in line in front of you? Like, just acknowledge, like, man, I'm just grateful. Or did you pay for somebody's food, and did you have gratitude for the ability to do that for somebody else? And just, those are the moments we want to expand, because gratitude, when we focus in on gratitude, that expands. Like, those feelings expand. And that's what I want to expand. Those things that light my soul up, that make me feel full and complete. That's what I want to have in every moment.
No, trust me, that makes total sense. Do you like, I made a post yesterday. I'm like, there's 45 days left in 2021. One of my mentors was like, what intentions are you setting? What are your plans for 2022? And it's interesting how we were just talking about being present, and now we're going into, that came up. But like, I'm curious, how are you, thinking about 2022, or are you a forward thinker to that, thinking 18?
Oh yeah, absolutely. My wife and I, we run a business together. So we do, every Sunday we have business meetings, and we sit down for 2 or 3 hours every Sunday, and we plan out the week. We plan out kind of what's coming in financially, what's going out financially. We have an abundance meeting. We do meetings every week, every Sunday. And then every month we have a monthly meeting, and then we do a quarterly meeting. So we've already planned out our quarter, and we started laying out tracks for 2022. We try to make sure where we want to go in our mind is aligned with who we're being
and what you're doing.
Yeah. Because sometimes your ideas in your brain aren't what's aligned with who you're being in the world. So you either got to up level who you're being, or you got to align your goals with your identity.
Yeah. What I was thinking about was like, so it's like, think about your goal. If I think I'm going to say this right. So it's either, are you going to increase, if your goal is a big goal, are you going to either increase your activity or decrease your goal? It's like, so that.
And I always say is, are you going to up level the person you are? So this is where the identity, because this is the identity piece, because you can't outperform your identity. So you can do 1,000 activities and have the identity of a minimum wage worker. You will return to the minimum wage worker at some point. So if you want to have $1 million bank account, you have to have the identity of a millionaire. And you got to upgrade that person. What is that person? Who are they? How do they think? How do they move? How do they develop themselves? What questions do they ask themselves? What activities do they perform every day? And if you look at those things and you look at what you do and they don't align, then you have to align there or go or decrease the goal. Because you can't do a bunch of activity. You can't move your feet and expect the achievement to come to you. You got to improve the person to reach the achievement.
That's so true.
Yeah.
I feel like, a lot of people might not even know that. How would you, if someone came to you and you're like, Jim, I want to change my life, and in the shortest answer possible, what would your answer be? Like, Jim, I want to change my life. I don't like the person I am. I don't like, the things that are happening in my life. Like, what would be your answer to that?
Well, you got to take responsibility for your life. That's probably the thing that I've learned the most in coaching is with men, they have to take responsibility for everything that's going on in the world. And it's so easy to put blame on the world. It's so easy to put blame on your family, to put blame on your situation. But when you take responsibility, then like it's your shit. Like where your ship goes, you're driving it. You get to decide every day where it's going. You get to take responsibility for where it doesn't go. And be okay one way or the other. But learning to take, I mean, radical responsibility for who you are as a person will shift. And I mean, when I say radical responsibility, that means every situation you get into, you're asking, who am I being that's bringing this into my world? Like, I don't give a, I mean, if it's the worst things, like my two tires blew out on my car, right? Who am I being today? What's my energy like? How am I going to move forward? Am I going to allow this two tires to blow out to ruin my whole day? Or am I just going to get my tires fixed and move throughout my day? And really just being responsible for every step.
Yeah. That's so good. And so the book by Jocko Willink, I think he talks about like responsibility, and I talk heavily about this. I'm a big believer of this. I say, you know, like once you take full responsibility for your results and everything that's happening in your life, the good and the bad, and then you realize like you are fully responsible for all this, and then it actually leads to more self-awareness. It leads to more understanding, because you're like, okay, because a lot of people don't even we grow up in a way, like even myself, I would say, growing up in a first world country, coming from a third world country, like there's probably some form of entitlement within my character. And it's so easy to just think like, okay, the government and the state and, you know, this and that, my job, my career, my parents, all this, they're going to take care of me. But really, it's like once you take full responsibility and realize that the results that I have right now, it's actually, I am the one fully responsible for these. And I feel like for me, taking full radical responsibility in my life, my actions, and the fact that the reason why I am right now here today is based on my own actions, based on my own manifestations, based on the things that I've been thinking and doing, it has actually led to massive changes. That's a great answer to wanting to change your life. You know, how can you change your life? You start taking radical responsibility.
It is. I think too, like you said, it's you have to really be consumed with the idea that no matter how good or bad it is, like you're responsible. And it's okay. Like that's okay. If it's a bad day, you can fix it. If it's a good day, you can continue it. You get to choose along the way, because it's so easy to have the bad day be somebody else's fault, but you're the one living with it. And so either if you're living with it, then it needs to be your responsibility,
and you
give that person power.
And exactly. That's what I was about to say. I cut you off. So you're giving somebody else power when you do that, by not taking responsibility. So
and I want to have all the power when it comes to which way I'm moving every day. And everybody has shit. Everybody has circumstances. Everybody has wounds. Everybody's got something. We're all bringing stuff to the table. I believe, like you were saying, the more responsibility you take, the more awareness you have, because you start to really see yourself where you don't take responsibility, where you do take responsibility, what you let slide, what standards you do hold for yourself. And then you're able to like, okay, I need to up level that, stop taking this discounted version of a relationship from this person, poor friendships over here. I need to up level everything.
Exactly. Like this sounds like me, like early 20s, I was always had this desire and goals to be a self-made millionaire one day and be wealthy one day and all these things. And it's interesting that as I started to take full responsibility and build that self-awareness, I started to understand more of like what's actually the things that's holding me back, the friendship that's holding me back. I started to realize that, the actions that I was taking on a daily basis, drinking and partying, it's not congruent with me wanting to make a lot of money and be wealthy. And like that self-awareness, that process led me to, lead to more understanding and better changes and things happening in my life, because I actually which comes down to the asking questions, right? Where the process made me realize for myself, which is self-awareness in a way you could say that, like, oh, wow, I'm trying to be a self-made millionaire by the time I'm 30 or 35, yet I'm, going to the club and partying and drinking on the weekend.
Yeah.
And like, this does not make sense, right? So it's like, if I want to be that person, does this on the weekend. That person doesn't drink. That person has goals and journals and has intentions set and sets his goals 12 months ahead of time and understands and reads books and all these things, right?
So you're shifting your identity to match the goals that you have for your life.
Mm-hmm. I always get a lot of people. So I'm not really familiar on NLP, right? But I have a lot of friends that tell me that the way you talk, the way you operate in your life, the way you do sales, everything is like you are full on an NLP practitioner. And I'm like, but like, I've never actually taken courses on it or anything like that. I have read a little about it in the sense of what it might be, but
so I did sales for the last, I did sales for the last 6 years or 5 years, 4 or 5 years. Okay. I left teaching and I got into corporate sales.
Okay.
And I went and got certified, and I'm telling you, it shifts everything. It's just language and body language and being able to move people with words. It's very powerful.
Yeah,
and I'm a firm believer communication is probably your most important skill set.
Of course.
Learning how to talk to people, learning how to communicate with outcomes in mind, learning how to create forward movement and common ground for each person to kind of have a space in the conversation. And in sales, it's been powerful. In coaching, it's absolutely off the charts powerful.
How could I use NLP? Because I was curious, like, is this something like how could I use it to help myself? And it's like, does it have to be, let's say it was sales or like with my own life?
No, I mean, it's obviously like it starts breaking, you break down. It's a form of using models. And this is what you do.
Okay.
You find people that are successful, see how they operate.
Yeah.
And you model your behavior after them.
Okay.
And so what NLP does is it speeds up that process. So you're able to look at, hey, this person's successful because they do A, B, C. They have these daily activities. And then how do I take that and model that behavior and into my own life through my own words, through my own language. And so it becomes, and there's different techniques, but that's one of the bases of NLP is using modeling.
Yeah.
I think his name is Bandler. That was his name, Bandler. Okay. He was one of the creators of NLP.
Okay.
And he was a big model person. He liked to look at people that were super successful and model how they got at that place. And so he would build models around it, and he used language to model. And so it was pretty cool how he did it.
That's interesting. And like, I feel like, so when it comes to, let's say, I'm very aware that communication and speaking, like, is powerful. The words that I speak create the experiences that I live. And also when it comes to interacting with other individuals, whether it's in business, relationship, or any interaction, like, I am very well aware of the power of communication, tonality, speaking high and low, and all these. Like, I guess I've learned it through just reading books on like how to increase my communication skills. I have read a lot of books on communications and, tonality and things like that. But
body posture, things like that, or
right?
rapport is what they call it a good bit, which is huge.
I used to play a lot of poker. So so I was a very like ambitious kid from the ages of 16 to 21. So I got, I'm pretty sure I've shared this on the podcast before, but so like at 16, I got charged for trafficking, and I was a very rebellious kid. I went through, drugs and the whole 9 yards. And then, parents were like, you better get a job or you're kicked out of the house. So I ended up getting a job. And then I had some friends that played professional poker. Like, one of them was a nurse. Another one was like, they had regular jobs, but their goals were to become professional poker players in the next 3 years. And they would like play 6-7 hours a day. And they were like 6-7 years older than me at the time. Right. So one of them, I started to learn poker from them. I would go and watch them while you would play 8 to 10 tables, and I would watch how to get good at it and stuff like that. Right. So I read a lot of books on psychology and body posture and stuff like that, because I would go to these underground games that I wasn't allowed to be, but my friends and their parents, like they would allow me to come play with, like, 30, 40-year-olds. And I was really good. I would make money with poker. Like I played it till I was 21, 22, and I've played a couple like professional tournaments and stuff like that. But that's something that taught me a lot about, I would say, just understanding the other person, body posture, like hands, if you're by the door and somebody is like their hands out like this, or like there's so many different little clues that you can take on someone when you're having a conversation with them without them saying anything, right?
Yeah, and in sales, and I mean in coaching, and just in general, it's how you use language, and then how that language affects people. And you can watch people move by the words you use, and different tonality, different the way you move physically, the level of language you use with certain people, or cuss words, things like that, where like Tony Robbins, he does it a good bit, where he'll say things just to shock the hell out of you, and then it's like he can get you back in the state where he can talk to you, because sometimes the humdrum language, it puts people into a trance, and so you have to break them out of where they are so they can be, and it offends people, but it's also a way to kind of snap them into a reality that where they are is not where they want to be. And you can, by the words you say, and I've worked with hundreds of men now, and I watch people. So I do a lot of in person, and I do a lot of Zoom. So I watch people, and when I talk, I can see how their body moves. I can see how their face moves. I see how their eyes move. I see the color of their skin. I watch how firm things get, how soft things get. I'm paying attention. Anytime I'm in conversation with people, I'm like you, I'm looking at everything that moves. And that gives me cues as to where I'm moving with my language, what's going to push a button, what's going to make them feel comfortable, and do I want to not make them feel comfortable? And that's kind of the game I play with myself.
Yeah, I know, it's interesting. And I think it's just someone listening to this right now, they're like, wow, that's really cool. And I feel like I've had a lot of friends where they're like, that seems almost like, you're being articulate, or, in getting into conversations, and like you're like using people in a sense, but it's like, no, it's like you are just actually, it's a form of self-awareness. It's a form of understanding your own self, right? What would you say, out of all the certifications that you have done, which one of them would you say has helped you more towards your own process of doing your own inner work?
I think I wouldn't even say the certifications. So I would say life.
Yeah.
So I mean, I have, I probably have like 4 degrees. I have several certifications, and I have all those things.
Yeah.
And the work came from me going through adversity, going through struggle, facing the darkness. And there was no paper that I received that could get me through that. Yeah. There was me and the situation.
I love that.
And so it becomes then, do I fold to the situation?
Yeah.
Or do I develop a muscle to work through the situation? And do I find mentors to help me through that situation? And I did a combination. I've been through a ton, and I've seen a lot of bad things, and I know you have too. And every time I face a situation, I get tougher. I grow deeper as a man. I'm always looking for a little adversity, because for me, and I tell my wife this probably every 6 months, I'm like, I need a little challenge in life. Because when I'm in challenge, I feel alive. And I know that I'm hyper aware of the work I need to do to up level. And I'm zero focused in. And I built that. Now, in the beginning, when I was going through the shitty situations, I was a mess. But I had to learn. I had to learn to face adversity not as this was something to break me, but this was something to build me. And as I learned to build me and develop me as a man, and like I feel like I built a machine now. Like I can face situations, see them, grow from them. Face situations, see them, grow from them. And I've seen things that'll break most people, and I've gone through things that'll break a lot of people. And I've come out like stronger. I've come out tougher. I've grown deeper as a man. And every time now it's like, how can I grow from this place? How can I grow from this place? Like you asked that question, how can I love myself more today? That's it. Like, what kind of work can I do on myself today that'll give love to me as a man?
No, that's so good. That's so good.
Yeah.
And it's interesting as you're just sharing that, because I think it's so powerful, and me, myself, I come from a family of academics, but myself, I barely made it out of school. I'm not academic university kid or nothing like that. And, I have a lot of friends and a lot of people in my inner circle and students that look and admire the person I have become in this day and age. And it's interesting. And someone was to ask me, I always say that you learn the most from the pain. And I always say the cure for the pain is in the pain. And I read this somewhere once. And so it's like, the best lesson on my journey has been by making a decision to pay attention to all the feelings that come up and listen to my body and just get deep within myself, spend more time with myself, it's been the best lesson. And it's interesting. I'm so glad that you shared that with me, because I respect anyone that's got the degrees and the masters and the doctorates. That's hard to spend 10 years of reading and studying and doing tests and all these things. So I honor that, but it's interesting that the most of them that I do talk to, they're like, but the most, contribution towards my growth and my healing was, the pain, the paying attention and the adversity that came. And by me choosing to face that adversity and not giving into it. Right. And of course, the information and the knowledge that you gain along the way was, it's helps you make the decisions that you have made. Right. That's so awesome. And I
always say it's like sitting in a fire. And you can learn to sit in the fire because, swords are forged in fire. They heat them up and they beat them. They heat them up and beat them. They form them. They shape them.
Yeah.
Or you can be like plastic. You put it in fire, it melts. And I taught the men all the time about, you got to learn to be comfortable sitting in the fire. Because you're going to face it more than you desire. You're going to see it more than you want to. So if it's if you're going to see it on a regular basis, you're going to face it in many seasons of your life. You need to get comfortable with the heat. You get to get comfortable there and, and face it. I do this, and, this is probably not even related, but it is related. So every day I work out every day, and I go and I sit in the sauna, 180 degrees for 30 minutes every day after my workout. And it's like, 10 minutes in, you're good. 15 minutes in, you're like, ooh, this is getting uncomfortable. 20 minutes in, you're like, oh, okay, I say the clock. But can you sit in that heat? Because it's good for your body. It's good for your mind. Can you feel comfortable with discomfort?
Yeah.
And grow in that space, because that's where you find your meaning to move forward. That's where you find your reason to grow. Your desires come from not wanting to be in the situation you're in now. It's like, I want to be here, and I got to face now to get there.
Yeah. What's crazy? I feel like most men want to be, more self-aware and make money and be stronger and have the dream girl. And I think what's really killing that desire and that dream is not that they're not willing to work for it. It's more like comfort. We live in a world where, like, you get off work and this is from experience. I believe that, empires are built. If you have a 9 to 5, empires are built between that, what you do after 5 till 2 p.m. at night, right? So when you come home, are you watching Netflix and this marathon and ordering food and watching your favorite show and have a fantasy football? Yet, if you're not spending, like I've done this with individuals and clients where it's like 168 hours in a week, 60 hours for sleep, 30 hours for eating and making your meals, 20 hours for this and 40 hours for work, you end up having an extra 30 hours that you're like, well, what am I doing with this? Oh, I'm watching this marathon, fantasy football, that if I actually took that time and used it to just grow as a person or work out or to start that side hustle or whatever it is that I want, it's game over. Like it's actually game over, right? And I think that's the craziest thing is like, it's comfort is very deadly. And I think that's why it's very important to be consciously aware and consciously build challenges in your life, consciously go out there and do things that gets you out of your comfort zone. Because I think that's where there's so much growth that can unfold if you decide to start just getting uncomfortable in your life.
Yeah. And learning to be somebody that likes the work, because the average human desires comfort. They desire not to work.
Yeah.
They want to do everything that frees them from the responsibility of having to do more.
Yeah.
And so the people that achieve, the people that are super successful, the people that are always progressing and you're looking at, it's because they've got comfortable making themselves accountable to work. Like, hey, I know in order to achieve this, I have to do a little bit more. I have to work a little harder. I have to improve myself in these areas. I have to set goals for this. I have to wake up a little earlier, stay up a little later, read another book, make another post, reach out to another 25 people, whatever it may be. But they've got comfortable with the work. So you got to get comfortable with the things that make you feel uncomfortable, but they're not really uncomfortable. You have built a story that work makes you uncomfortable. But work, the discipline to do the work, that makes you, like Jocko said, it gives you freedom.
No, it's so true. One last question here. It's right at the top of my head. I like to just go with my heart, anything that comes up, right? For these podcasts, I never like plan or what I'm going to do or anything like that, right? I just focus 1 hour of going into the flow. So I'm curious, let's say I'm someone for example, you have a client that is like that we're taught to don't cry, don't express your emotions and all these things. And they come to you and they're like, first of all, not prove to me, but tell me that, by expressing my emotions or crying, it's going to lead me to a path of becoming a better man. So what would you tell that person, or how would you really explain to them that it's okay to be in your emotions, it's okay to express emotions? And I'm assuming that you're someone that's okay with that. That's an advocate of feeling and processing and accepting your emotions, right? So I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I'm highly in tune with my emotions. No, so first thing I would ask them a question is like, up until this point, how has evading your emotions served your life? That would be that.
That's a good question.
And like, how's it served you moving forward? How's it served you in relationships? How's it served you into feeling okay with yourself every day? How's it served you into being able to get the anger out of your body, the anxiety out of your body? Then it's, if I said these things to somebody about how I feel, not my emotion, because we misconstrue the idea of what an emotion is versus what a feeling is. And so a lot of times the emotion is the reaction. The feeling is what we're actually feeling. It's like, so I may get angry that my wife didn't hear what I said. And so I respond with my emotion of anger. So she therefore won't hear anything I say. So I need to respond to her in a way that says, hey, I feel like when I talk to you, sometimes you're not listening to me. And I want nothing in the world more than the ability for us both to hear each other and to be there for each other when things are not going great and when things are going great. And so moving forward, I would love to come to you and ask, what can I have your undivided attention so you can hear what I have to say to you? And instead of attack with anger and lead with emotion, I'm going to lead with the feelings I have, because the feelings I have are my feelings. Nobody can argue with my shit. If I feel sad, I feel sad. That's not about you. A lot of times our emotions, we try to make our emotions about other people, but our feelings are our own. And there's a little deeper. So when we own our feelings and we're able to say, hey, these are my feelings. I'm not holding you responsible for them at all. You're off the hook. I just need you to hear what's going on with my feelings and see if you can help me find a way forward with them. And what that does is allows your partner to it frees them from responsibility. Number one, it also gives them an opportunity to serve you and help you and grow with you. And it gives you the freedom of getting the shit out, because that will eat you alive. If you just live with emotion and your emotion drives your ship every day, you have no idea where it's going. You're operating from a very feminine capacity. And so the masculine is able to process emotion, communicate emotion. Process emotion, communicate emotion. The feminine lives based off emotion. So we want to be able to process our emotion and communicate. And that means that, like, we have to talk about the things that are bothering us. And that's okay. It makes us powerful in the long run. It builds trust with the feminine. There's nothing worse than a woman that sees a man that hey, I'm good, everything's good. That's a lie. That's a wound. It's called the wounded masculine. Anytime a man says, I got it, I'm good, that's bullshit. He doesn't have it. He's falling apart on the inside every day. And that's going to burst out in some level of anger, rage, falling apart, hiding away, something. So you need to get it out of you. You need to see it, because a lot of times what we are having emotions around, once we look at it objectively, it's really not that big in the process, or that emotion is not what we're actually feeling. We want to get to the underlying feeling.
Yeah, no, that's so true, man. Yeah, that was really good. I want to say, first of all, thank you so much for your time. Like that, like even just right now, I feel like I have so many more questions. We could dive even deeper and deeper. You brought some value just for me as well. Before we finish off here, man, just let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at the.conscious.man, or I'm on Facebook at Jim Vance. I also have a podcast with my wife called the Advance Your Life podcast.
Okay.
Where it's called Find Your Power Through Polarity. Okay. Which is pretty cool.
That's amazing. Awesome. Yep. So guys, I'm going to put Jim's contact details in the details section of the podcast. So wherever you're listening to, whether it's on Spotify, iTunes, in the detail section, all his information will be. And yeah, man, I just want to say thank you so much for jumping on this. It was a pleasure of mine. I learned a lot, and I'm definitely taking some things away from this, and I'm sure the listeners are as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Muhammad. Have a good one.
Awesome, man. And just guys, as we finish up the podcast here, I just want to say my intentions for you as you listen to this is, please, not only for entertainment purposes, but take something away from this and start implementing in your life. There's a lot of amazing content and nuggets that James just shared with us. And so I would say one of my biggest intentions for you is also to go and buy a journal and start journaling, especially because there's just so many benefits to it. But with that being said, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. And until next time, stay an aware alpha.